Hey, I just read an article in the Wall Street Journal that's talking about how ocean shippers are having problems if they're trying to export products from the United States because there are very few shipping containers available. And I thought this article was very interesting because about a month ago, I read an article that said that China was having a problem getting shipping containers to export goods. So it's also interesting to see that the US is having these issues. And as a person who imports products from China, we make our bedtime bulb product there and have it shipped over to the United States and to other places. This is of interest to me. So let's dive right into my highlights on this article. And the first thing is that they're saying that agricultural exporters are having the biggest problems right now. And that's really interesting. I looked at the top US exports, and indeed food and beverage is our top export. You might not know this, but China is one of the world's largest soybean importers from the US. So we're one of the biggest exporters of soybeans, and China is one of the largest importers. We also export a lot of fuel and oil, and we also tend to export a lot of aircrafts and aircraft engines. However, I don't think that's happening right at this moment. And just to get a perspective on this, the kind of things that we import in the US, the top 3 categories are machinery, including computers, electrical equipment and electronics, and vehicles. So you can see that the demand for Chinese goods is high because a lot of the things in those first 2 categories are coming from China. Vehicles, there are some companies, notably Volvo, producing in China. However, a lot of the vehicles are actually being produced in the neighboring countries of Mexico and Canada, and you don't need a shipping container for a car if it's a land transit. Another thing that might help with perspective is this graph that I found on oec.world, and it outlines the largest importers by trade value to the US. So you can see that China is the largest importer, and then Mexico and Canada are actually our second and third largest importers, and a lot of those are cars. So again, you don't really need a container for a car. It's more likely that you're going to have a land transport for something like that. So a huge volume of those containers are just going between China and the US. So this was interesting. Carriers are refusing bookings for trans-Pacific agricultural exports and canceling those already booked. We're getting locked out of foreign markets, according to someone who's trading and trying to export from the US. So that's going to give you another clue as to what's going on. So the density of the trade value of goods coming in from China is much higher than the goods going out. So for example, if you pack a container full of MacBooks, that's going to be worth a lot more in total than a container full of soybeans. And indeed, the cost of a container from China to the US West Coast is currently going beyond $4,000 just to ship the container, while the return shipment is only $518. So you see a huge imbalance of value. So China really wants these containers back. But here's the rub, because China is also having a problem getting enough containers to export. So where did all these containers go missing? Are they in other countries? Like, did they get stuck in Europe? So I think this is the line right here that's really critical. Demand swung sharply from record lows to record highs within a few months. The problem that was not stated in this article, but I think the issue here is that ocean shipping is slow. You can put stuff on an airplane from China and it can get there within a few days. The actual trip from China takes less than a day, and then you've got your customs processing times. But when you put something on the ocean, you've got your customs processing and your unloading times, but you've also got 20 to 45 days on the water itself, and that's really slow. So when you have a transit time of 20 to 45 days and you have demand swinging around all over the place, this is a problem because the containers are probably stuck somewhere between here and China. So neither country has access to put containers out there. And it's interesting that the companies that are responsible for moving the containers around are prioritizing unloading those containers and then getting them right back on the ocean, even though we've got goods to export that we need to send to China. China needs our food and we need the containers to ship them. But the companies are prioritizing just getting those containers right back to China. So that 20 to 45 days thing is also really interesting from the perspective of, well, now we're within 45 days of Christmas. So all of the goods that need to get here before Christmas, either they have to be booked by basically now and get on that boat, or they've got to get on an airplane, which is much more expensive. And keep in mind, airplanes aren't really flying now much either. So cargo planes, where the entire plane is filled with boxes, is one mode of transportation, but a lot of the things that are imported by air are actually put in the bottom of passenger airplanes. When passenger airplanes basically aren't flying, that means that most of your cargo is going to have to go on a cargo plane, and that means that the prices overall for air freight are going to go up. And meanwhile, it's hard to get your stuff booked onto an ocean liner at this point, so the prices are going up there too. And I suspect what's going to happen is we might see some increases in the cost of goods over the next few months. You know, we'll probably have our Black Friday sales. Those things are probably already imported, but after that, the cost for regular goods will go up because the shipping charges are so much higher coming from China. Now, I also thought this line was interesting. In South Korea, government officials on Thursday called in container line executives to warn them against violating contracts with Korean exporters after complaints empty boxes were sent to China on the back of stronger freight rates there. So looking back at that chart, I see Korea here, and it's only 3% of the exports to the US. So the imports to the US, we're only seeing 3% from South Korea. Meanwhile, we're seeing 20% from China. So it's much more critical to get those containers into China because the bulk of the demand is there and they know they're going to fill the containers if they send them to China. Moral of the story here is that when you have supply chain disruption, you have ripple effects all across the world, and it can take months, maybe even years to recover from that. So hopefully this will all get worked out by next year, especially once we have vaccines and supply chains return to normal on both sides. We can have extra containers all over the place so that we can more efficiently ship goods without them costing too much. But in the meantime, we're just going to have to deal with the inability to export because there aren't enough containers, and the inability for China to even export stuff to here unless they want to pay a high cost because they don't have enough containers. Pretty crazy, right?